Shalom, and welcome to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. This is a recording of Rabbi Adam Kligfeld's weekly Rashi study class.
Hello to anyone who's listening to this on the Temple Beth Am podcast series. It's Wednesday morning in Los Angeles, Wednesday late morning on the East Coast where I am right now, and great to be back in study with all of you. I have two different places in my book as to where we ended last week. Does someone have conclusive evidence as to the last thing we read and discussed? Lara, you keep usually good notes on that. Do you have it yet? Do you have it? Or Rebecca, I see you unmuted.
Yeah, because I was reading it, so that's why I remember.
Okay, where were we?
We were in the Pasuk Tet Zayin, where the discussion of Mikra Kodesh, and we got through 2/3, I think, of the Rashi or something like that. I don't remember exactly how much of the Rashi, but did the Mikra Kodesh part of the Rashi for sure.
Okay, so we did the Mikra Kodesh.
It's the Rashi that starts with L'chol Nefesh.
We did the Hu Levado?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, so let's read the verse to get us going, and then we'll start from there. So the verse is, we're in chapter 12, verse 16, and we've now spent a lot of time on this verse, which is great. We're not going to spend much more time on the Pshat itself, but I just want to get us into it so we can get to the Rashi. Chapter 12 of Shemot, verse 16. Uvayom harishon mikra kodesh. On the first day, there will be a declaration of holiness. Uvayom hashvi mikra kodesh. And on the seventh day, a declaration of holiness. Yelechem, it will be for you. Kol malacha lo ye'aseh vahem. All manner of work will not be done on them. If you're wondering why malacha is feminine and ye'aseh looks masculine rather than te'aseh, it's because the subject of the verb ye'aseh, which is the negative lo te'aseh, is not malacha, but kol malacha. And the all of the kol becomes the new subject, and kol is masculine. Ach asher ye'echel l'chol nefesh. So ach is something like but anything that would be for the food, for eating of any person, hu levado ye'aseh lachem. That is what can be done for you. And we discuss how this is one of the origins of one of the major differences between Shabbat and Yantif laws. The three major differences are you're allowed to carry on Yantif, not on Shabbat. You're allowed to transfer a flame on Yantif, not on Shabbat. And you're allowed to cook on Yantif, and not on Shabbat. You can cook from scratch on Yantif as long as the source of heat has already been prepared. Okay. And we got through a few of the Rashis, but now let's go to Hu Levado, which I think is the third Rashi on that verse. Okay. Let's see. Jeremy, can I put you on the spot? Do you want to read that Rashi? Because it's good to have you here. You can also say no.
Sorry, I'm not in a position where I can pick it up. I'm just listening. Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay, Rick, do you want to read Hu Levado?
Sure, Rabbi. Okay. Hu velo machshirav she'efshar lasotan me'erev yom tov. Okay. Just like to look at the English while I'm doing this. There's so many Rashis, it's on the next page. Wow. It says 16?
Yeah, 16, the third Rashi on verse 16.
Okay. That alone is the Hu Levado, okay? So
right. And before you even read the Rashi, what's your instinct as to what is the issue or problem in the verse such that Rashi is going to try to solve it? What's the extraneousness in the verse?
Why does it need to say by himself, Levado? I don't know.
Who would have been sufficient, right? Who, that can be done for you. regarding the things that are for preparing food. So
Right,
levado
right.
seems to be a intensifier, but again, if you're reading each verse for every single possible ounce of meaning, the levado could be read as extraneous, therefore we have to learn some rule out of it. It's fodder for rule, and I'll say for the 200th time, if not more, it's unclear if in a moment like this, when Rashi's quoting the Talmud, was the Talmud deriving the rule from the verse, or did the Talmud inherit the rule and then use this verse to hang it on? We'll never know for sure. Something like that. Go ahead.
So that and velo and not machshirav, that's possible, shafar, she'efshar lasotan, to do from the evening of the Yom Tov, of the right. Festival.
What's machshirav? What's a machshir?
Don't know.
What's the root?
An instrument or a machine.
Kosher.
Kosher. What does kosher mean in its primal form? I mean, nothing to do with food.
Okay to use, permissible.
Fit, right? Fit. F-I-T, right? If in modern Israeli life, if you go to the workout room in your hotel, you're going to the cheder kosher, literally the fitness room, right? The verb lahachshir in the he feel, in the causative, is to make something fit, to prepare, to do something that will make something ready for the next stage. So machshirav it's one Hebrew word, but it means those acts that are done to prepare the food to be ready to be cooked, to be eaten. She'efshar la'asotan me'erav Yom Tov. If you could have done those before Yontif, that is excluded from this permission. Right? So Rashi says, what's the levado? As if the Torah is saying, yes, that you may have done in Yontif, but that alone, don't widen. I mean, what's every human being's instinct when given a permission? Widen it, right? Ask for more, right? What else can I include in this leniency? And Rashi, quoting the Talmud Masechet Beta, says, even though, by the way, this leniency has expanded, Rashi is not really operating here as a halachist, as a decisor, but as a commentator. He's saying what the verse means is, through the prism of the Talmudic interpretation, the only things that you can do on Yontif for food purposes that you otherwise might have thought you couldn't do because Yontif are those things which are necessary to be done on Yontif to eat, but not any preparatory activities that you could have done beforehand, right? Hu levado. Questions, comments? Even though, again, in practice, we permit much more than that, right? Like you can open up a container on Yontif, even on Shabbat, by the way, even though it involves ripping, because it's connected to eating. And even though you could make the claim that, well, you could have opened up that container before Yontif, and therefore you should be able to open it on Yontif if it says levado. In practical law, you can, but there might be other things, right? I don't know. Let's say harvesting the wheat, right, or grinding the wheat. I don't think you can. You could bake bread on Shabbat and Yontif if you have flour. I don't think you can grind wheat on Yontif to create the flour in order to bake the bread. That would be considered a machshir. Grinding is a malacha. It's labor. It can't be done on Yontif. It can't be done on Yontif even for making food if it's not the actual cooking act, but it's the preparatory act. Okay? Comments, questions? Okay. Rachel, yes.
Does this, thank you, does this injunction, which you can do on Yontif, I'm thinking of Erev Tavshilin. Is this connected at all to doing a formal statement or ritual to permit us to prepare on Yontif for Shabbos?
It's connected-ish. Erev Tavshilin is very specifically the case you just mentioned, which is, can we use the permissibility of cooking on Shabbat as opposed to the impermissibility of cooking? Sorry, can we use the permissibility of cooking on Yontif as opposed to the impermissibility of cooking on Shabbat to cook on Yontif for Shabbat? And the technical answer is no, you cannot use that permissibility. And the legal fiction is, but if you start cooking for Shabbat before Yontif begins, then you haven't initiated cooking for Shabbat on Yontif. You're just continuing an act, and that's permissible. And that's what Erev Tavshilin is. So Erev Tavshilin is sort of harnessing the power of these verses to say, you are allowed to cook on Yontif, but your permission to cook on Yontif is circumscribed. In our verse, it's circumscribed by only those things which are actually cooking and not preparatory acts that would otherwise would be considered prohibited labors. And it's circumscribed in the Erev Tavshilin case in that you can't generally just cook on Yontif for Shabbat unless you've done Erev Tavshilin. So they're in the same realm, but that law doesn't come out of this verse per se. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Next one, which I think is the last one on the pasuk. Rick.
Lechol nefesh, afilu livhema, yechol af lagoyim, Talmud lomar lachem.
Okay. So in 2 words and then adding one more word, Rashi is going to derive 2 rules in one direction: a leniency and then a stringency. What's the leniency?
Well, it's all about who's the nefesh.
What's a behema?
Cattle, animals.
Right.
So
what are you thus permitted to do?
You can feed your animals.
Certainly you can feed them, but what else can you do?
I don't know.
Acts that are in the direct preparation of food to be served even to animals on Yontif are permitted, because the verse says, Kol malacha, any act, lo yeyaseh lechem bahem, cannot be done on those days, except asher ye'achel lechol nefesh, except for that which could be eaten by any living thing, any nefesh, using the word nefesh here to mean like a living being, hu levado yeyaseh lechem, that you can do. So whereas in the previous verse, the levado limited, that it's only acts that go directly to preparing food, not the preliminary acts that are prohibited. Now, the chol widens it. You can even do it to your animals, right? So I suppose I haven't studied how this translates into practical law in a long time. I don't know. Can you actually cook food on Yontif to give to your livestock? I don't know, but you could prepare food that might otherwise have involved a prohibited labor. The chol is expansive, but then Rashi, quoting the Mechilta, which is the halachic midrash in the book of Shemot, narrows that which he widens. Yachol in midrashic language means, is it possible that? It's a question whose answer is always no. Might I have thought that since you expanded the category that allowed me to serve anything, including my animals, on Yontif, even if it involves a prohibited act, I might have thought, what? Afla goyim? What does that mean, Rick?
Even the non-Israelites.
Yeah, can I cook for non-Jews on Yontif? That's kol. Talmud lomar.
That's all I have. The
Talmud
English
lomar
says lachem.
Lachem, right? So Rashi says, if you are wondering if the word kol includes non-Jews, look at the last word of the verse. Rashi says lachem. It's another limitation, right? We had limitation, levado, expansion, kol, and then limitation, lachem. That which is being done to provide you with something, and your animals, your livestock are included. I don't know if your dog is, but your livestock are. But not for non-Jews. You're not allowed to do otherwise prohibited labor on Yontif to prepare food to be eaten by a non-Jew. And all that is being pulled out of these words that could have been removed from the verse, and the verse still would have made basic sense. Barry.
Just an example of work to prepare food for animals is using a rake to carry the hay from one location to another location to put in the trough to feed the animals. So you're doing work to prepare the food.
Correct. And if that work was in the category of a malacha, right, like a halachically prohibited work, you could do it if it was the direct act to get the animals fed, even on Yantif, right?
Yeah.
Right. If you live on or work on a religious moshav or kibbutz to this day, they operate the machinery, obviously, and they do the acts to make sure that their livestock are fed, and you even have to milk the cows on Shabbat Yantif, because to not do so would be cruel to them, would be causing them pain, right?
Yeah.
But you can't do it for non-Jews according to this reading, and you can only do the things that are directly connected to their eating.
Yeah.
Good.
The English and the Silverman, hi. The English
Hi.
and the Silverman has every being that belongs to you, the responsibility for feeding which belongs to you. So how do they get all of that, like meaning servants or slaves, people that belong to you? Or do they mean, does Silverman mean just associated with you, somebody living in your house that happens to be passing by?
He means
that's not in the Rashi.
He means just that which belongs to you. That the lachem, because he's rejecting the possibility that it extends to non-Jews. No, this permissibility is limited. It's limited to that for which is connected to you, that you're responsible for, that is in your realm, not non-Jewish neighbors.
Okay.
All right.
Okay. Am I done?
It seems like you want to be, so yes. Elon.
So would that preclude one from inviting a non-Jewish neighbor over for a Shabbat meal or a holiday meal, given the fact that you would be preparing the food for them as well?
The answer is no, it doesn't preclude that. It's the mirror image of that which we talked about last week, where the legal fiction that allows a non-Jew to put up coffee on Shabbat, take a sip, and we say, he was really cooking for himself and the leftovers are for us, right? So you're not allowed to eat food cooked on Shabbat by a non-Jew if the non-Jew made it for a Jew. But if the non-Jew made it for a non-Jew and there's stuff left over for you, you can partake in it. The reverse. If you're basically cooking on Yontif for Jews and there's extra, then you can serve it to a non-Jew. But what you couldn't do is say, I'm fasting today. You can't fast anyway, Yontif. But I'm inviting 5 of my favorite non-Jews over for Yontif lunch, and I'm cooking just for them, and I'm cooking on Yontif. That you couldn't do. But if you're serving your family as well, it's this concept of notar. The leftover you can give to the non-Jews. You can't have them in mind when you're cooking them. You can't have them exclusively in mind when you're cooking for them. Okay, good. Let's go to verse number 17. Well done, Rick. Let's see. Who should we ask? I don't keep well enough track as to who recently read. Susan, do you want to read verse 17?
Susan, me?
Susan, you.
Happy to. I'm just getting myself organized though. Wait. I would be happy to. I need glasses. And I gotta find verse 17. 17 is
Ushmartem.
Ushmartem et hamitzvot ki be'etzem
read that again.
Et ushmartem et hamitzvot, hamatzot.
And the reason why I did that is because first, it's very easy to confuse them. And Rashi is going to play with that, right? If you, without vowels, mem, tsadi, vav, taf can be sounded out both matzot, where the vav is just an O sound, or mitzvot, because just a single vav with a dot can be O or vo. It can be the consonant vav plus the O sound. And you could, and the whole notion of ushmartem, and you shall protect, you can imagine the next word being mitzvah, right? To be shomer mitzvot is to be observant of mitzvot. So your brain wants the next word to be mitzvot, but our received tradition is that it's matzot, that we're talking about the matzahs here, not the mitzvahs. Okay.
Okay. I was just being a little lazy, I think. Ushmartem et amatzot, ki be'etzem hayom hazeh, הוצאתי את צוותיכם מארץ מצרים, ושמרתם את היום הזה לדורותיכם חוקת עולם.
Okay.
חוקת עולם. Okay. And you will guard, you will protect, you will observe the matzot, the matzot,
right? Parentheses. It's unclear here, and we'll get into this, but I'll just, because I want people to understand what's happening in the verse itself. It's unclear if this phrase, ushmartem et hamatzot, is referring to the process by which they are made, in which case, what would be the concern?
I don't know. I don't know. What do you mean? What's the question?
If the phrase ushmartem matzot, you should protect, guard the matzot, is a warning regarding the preparation of the actual matzah crackers, then you have to guard it against what?
Leaven, against
so
being contaminated.
The plain meaning of the verse might be, careful, this is toxic stuff, this is nuclear, you got to be careful about it. There are some who believe, including Everett Fox, that ushmartem et hamatzot means, and you shall protect, observe, follow the matzot holiday, which may have been, according to some biblical scholars, an ancient biblical rite, a separate holiday from the Exodus holiday. They got smushed together. In which case, it's not clear if the opening line is about the breadstuffs, the crackers, or the entire holiday built around it. But either way, it could be read as matzot, not mitzvot. Okay. And why do you need to work so hard to protect them? Ki
בעצם היום הזה, because essentially this day I brought you out, I brought out Otseti et, I brought out your, flock, not flock.
Good.
Your
hordes,
group.
Right?
Hordes. There you go, hordes.
In modern Hebrew, it's an army, right? But Kadosh, Adonai Tzvaot, holy, holy, holy God of hosts, that's referring to God's retinue, right? Like the whole group of heavenly beings. So your retinue is your many hundreds of thousands, yeah?
I like hordes. It really brings up visions of Game of Thrones. Bring out
as long as you make sure you pronounce, as long as you pronounce the D at the end of that, then that's fine.
Yes. Me'eretz Mitzrayim, from Egypt, ushmartem et hayom hazeh, and you will observe this day throughout the ages and generations as a law of the universe, as a universal thing.
And since the word ushmartem appears twice in the verse, and since the second time it appears, it's clearly about observing a holiday, not about being careful about a preparation. That's why some people think that the first ushmartem is also about observing a holiday, not about be careful about how you're making the matzahs. And it's almost as if the first phrase should have been ushmartem et chag hamatzot, right? Which is different than Ushmar Tem and Matzot. And then Rashi is going to play with both things. And Rashi, again, at the core, is not writing a law code. He's writing a commentary on what the verse means or what it might mean. Good. Okay. And I know we already did some of the unpacking of the verse just in the translation, but you kind of have to on this verse before we even get to the questions. So now that we've got a basic possible shot as to what the verse means, let's pause for some questions or comments on the verse. We'll go to Rashi. I see Rick.
Just a trope thing. So the Ushmartem has the Ger Shayim, the second one has the Ger Shayim on it. So I went to the last time they used that, and it was on V'nich Rata. And then the next time that comes up, next sentence is also V'nich Rata, or the second two sentences, V'nich Rata. So there's to use the same music to bring your attention. These people are going to be cut off if they don't do it, and these people are keeping it if they do it. So that's what speaks to me there.
Nice, good, thank you, Joel, and then Barry, and then Larry, Diane.
I haven't read ahead to Rashi, but if any word were to stand out in this sentence, to me, it would be be'etzem as superfluous. I mean, why do we need the word be'etzem? I don't know if Rashi talks about that or not.
Okay, be your own Rashi. So yes, let's grant that it could be superfluous. And if you had to make a case for what the significance of that amplifier or that specificity, what could it mean?
I'll open up to the group on this one.
So if we take the Torah at face value, when is this rule being given?
At Sinai.
No. We're way ahead of Sinai.
The day before.
On that day, right? So it could be, the simplest is be'etzem hayom hazeh, that you should observe this law on this very day, as if the etzem is very, as opposed to essence. Now, etzem can also mean essence. It can also mean bone. But it's almost as God is saying, look at the calendar, folks. This day, this is the day you should observe this holiday, and not choose some other day on which to commemorate. That's the most common understanding that's not overly midrashized as to what etzem might mean. Not convinced? Your face looking at me, not convinced.
So it's like, it's not the anniversary of this date, but this actual day.
Well, right. I mean, it is the anniversary because he's
saying that this is the day. This isn't the anniversary of the day that I let you out. This is the day I let you out.
Observe it on the anniversary because this is the day that I brought you out. Yeah. Barry, Larry, Diane.
And just to continue that thought, that the doing the matzah, we are participating with God in reenacting the day. This is our doing the matzah. Our doing the matzah puts us with God in this day.
Right. It's and so much of the early rabbinic, medieval, and still modern observance of Pesach is a reenactment, right? We talked about this in previous verses, that particularly in the Sephardi community, they do a much more elaborate reenactment of, children dressing up as freed slaves with satchels over their shoulder and leaving Egypt, and the reenactment is built into the language of the Haggadah, right? In every generation, each person is obligated to see himself as if he or she left Egypt. Maimonides famously adds a hey to that line, and it's not lirot etzmo, to consider yourself as if you were a slave, because it's hard to consider yourself to be a slave if you were not a slave. But leharot means not to see yourself, but to show yourself, to portray yourself, to suggest that the primary act of the Seder night is to be in a drama, that you're showing yourself as if you were one of the ones who lived Egypt, even though clearly you were not.
It's something I do at my Seder, our Seder that
Susan, you're double. Okay.
It's something I do at our Seder, basically, that we are, this is our tribal act. We're reenacting our tribal story. So we in effect are redoing the story here. It's not a historical description, but it's something that we are doing to do again this.
Yeah. Larry, Diane?
I mainly wanted to read you the translations, but before I do, just a comment that we've made several times. I'm just reminding everybody that God is talking to Moses and Aaron. At the moment that Moses and Aaron are supposed to be gathering the people and going to be instructing them and getting everybody ready, and I can just see Moses saying, "Can't you wait to tell me this later on? Isn't this a detail I can deal with later on and not have to deal with right now?" But having said that, I'll give you the translations. Alter's translation is, "And you shall observe the flatbread," and flatbread is capitalized.
Right, he capitalized. He's hedging his bets there.
No, there's no hedging. You'll see in his comment. For him, you shall observe. I'm going to add the holiday of the flatbread that I'm going to call matzot.
I'm calling it flatbread. Yeah, got it. Yeah.
For on this very day I brought out your battalions from the land of Egypt, and you shall observe this day through your generations, an everlasting statute. He comments the flatbread. Here the term matzot is the name of the festival, which is also called Pesach, which is what you were alluding to, two different holidays. Some have plausibly conjectured that these, hold on. Did you bump your head? All right. Some have plausibly conjectured that these were originally two different holidays.
Wait, Larry, hold on. We love her, but that's all we hear. Literally, it's different on the receiving end than your end. It's all we're hearing is that.
Okay.
It's just loud.
Hold on. He's almost gone. Okay. Some have plausibly conjectured.
Hold on. That sound carries into Zoom. I want to hear you. I want to hear you, and yeah, it just carries louder on the receiving end than on what it sounds like from your end. Okay, go ahead.
No, it carries here too. Believe me. All right. Some have plausibly conjectured that these were originally two different holidays: Matzot, agricultural, and Pesach, pastoral, that were drawn together in the literary formulation of this text, and hence in Israelite practice. So I have nothing more to say about that one, but Kaplan, on the other hand, says, "Be careful regarding the matzahs, for on this very day I will have brought your masses out of Egypt. You must carefully keep this day for all generations. It is a law for all times."
Those two translations are a perfect simplified encapsulation of the different ways that Alter and Kaplan read the Torah, and they both are legit, right? Alter's going to read it through scholarship, and scholarship is going to investigate the potential fusion of two ancient festivals that were turned into one. And Kaplan's going to read it like a Fruma Yid, and a Fruma Yid is going to be impacted like our scroll is by Rashi. And as you'll see in a second, that's exactly the way Rashi reads it. Although Rashi doesn't give a complete rejection of another possibility, which is it's interesting to read Rashi through the prism of 20th and 19th century scholarship. Great, thanks, Larry. Okay, Rebecca.
So what I wanted to say was basically this whole discussion here, but I just wanted to emphasize that when I read the word Be'etzem, it sounds almost like he's saying, this is the coincidence that the matzah holiday is happening exactly on the same time, at the same time as I'm taking you out. So it could be another piece of evidence that they really were two different. It's like saying, oh, what a coincidence. My birthday is the same day I was born.
But etzem is the old word for dafka.
Yeah, it's like, right.
Untranslatable. Good. Thank you, Rebecca. Tova.
Am I unmuted?
Yes, we can hear
Okay,
you.
I'm getting a little thing saying I should unmute. All right, the way Etzem was hitting me is a little bit different. It just feels like we're at the end of this period of incredible turmoil and frightening things happening and remarkable things happening and this, coming together as a people and reuniting with our God. And in all of that, often when you're caught up in tumultuous times, it's hard to recognize the real turning point. And it's like God is saying, this day, now, this is it. This is really the moment of transformation. Recognize that. Identify that as this is the moment. Because out of all of that, it's sometimes hard to recognize when the change has really happened.
That's very nice, Tom. I love that read. As you know, weddings and chuppahs are on my mind right now for a lot of different reasons. And I officiated at a wedding on Sunday. And one of the things that I almost always do at a wedding is just before I speak to the couple, I ask them to turn around and take in the moment and take in the crowd. I don't use the word etzem, but I could. Like guys, it's actually happening. Etzem harega hazeh, in this very moment,
right?
You're taking a leap, right? So I have no idea if that's what was intended, but I love that read of etzem, and it's evocative of what it means in general. Our spiritual practice, which none of us is particularly good at it. So, myself included, is saying, yeah, this moment, this prayer moment, this candlelighting moment, this Kaddish moment, it's really happening. Don't miss it. So it's a lovely overlay of a Jewish approach to spiritual alertness on this verse, whether or not it's intended by Etzem. Wonderful. Thank you, Tova. Okay, we kind of teed up Rashi a little bit. Oh, Renee, yes, go ahead.
I just was curious about in Everett Fox, he says, and keep the, in parentheses, festival of Matzot. For on this day I've brought out your forces from the land of Egypt. Keep this day throughout your generations for the law of ages. And he said,
we can't hear you, Renee. We can't hear
he
you.
has a note that separates the festival from the one of matzah from the one of the lambs.
Right. That's similar to what Larry was. It's similar to what Larry was quoting before with altar. That by putting the word "festival of" in brackets, he's suggesting that it says matzot in Hebrew, but it really means Chag HaMatzot, the holiday having to do with the matzot, and it's not a phrase as Rashi is going to understand it specifically about the crackers, but about the entire festival related to them. And so he puts it in brackets because he thinks that you should read it as if those words should have been there, but they were not. Yeah. Okay. Back to you, Sue. Is Sue still here? Is she gone? I think Sue is gone. Oh no.
No, she's here.
No. Oh no, there she is. Oh, okay. You were gone from my screen for a bit. Okay.
I moved from my phone to my computer.
Okay.
And I'll read it. I love what Tova said, and the end of that phrase that says "Et hayom hazeh l'dorotechem chukat olam." I don't know if we have that in another place, but it's really, this is it from now forever. Is kind of, it's pretty powerful.
We do have versions of that phrase appear in different formulations in the Torah, where the Torah is being explicit that what's being commanded now is in perpetuity. Of course, our memory of the rules of Sinai is that all of them is in perpetuity, but sometimes it's emphasized, just like sometimes it's emphasized, Ani Adonai, I'm God, by the way. Well, yeah, I mean, we assume that all the time, but sometimes the psukim, particularly in the book of Vayikra, end with do this, Ani Adonai, Ani Adonai Alechem. So sometimes Chukat Olam is added in. I'm sure someone has done a master's thesis as to which mitzvot get Chukat Olam, which do not. Implicitly, we imagine that all of them get Chukat Olam in our understanding of our obligations to them. Okay, Rashi an
Okay.
ushmartem et ha-matzot.
Okay, he goes with the matzot, by the way.
Correct.
Ushmartem et matzot shelo yavou lidei chimutz. Chimutz.
So translate that.
Okay, the
gar-
matzah cannot get anywhere near the leavening, the thing that will ferment it.
Right,
That will make
chimutz here is not the thing that ferments, but the fermenting. It's the gerund, right? Lest it come through the process of chametzification, right? So what he's doing is he's arguing with the 20th century scholars 900 years earlier. He's basically saying, no, all this verse means is be careful when you're making your matzah. This is not about a separate holiday that's separate from the Exodus holiday. It doesn't mean mitzvot. It's like the first thing he's saying. It just means be careful making this stuff, lest it come to chimutz. And then he has a phrase, mikan.
Mikan amru, tafach tiltosh betzonen.
So what Rashi is about to quote is some medieval and or rabbinic, apparently like widely used colloquialism or idiom, right? And so it's and as with any idiom, there's a lot packed into every phrase. Tafach. Anyone know what the word tafach means? Right, to swell. It's related to nafoach, right? Aren't bellows nifochim? I think, or mapachim, something like that. It's so tafach. If it swelled, what's the it?
Tiltosh betonen. I don't. Well, I'm looking at there. I have a translation, but tiltosh is the kneader tiltosh. The kneading, that's latouche. That's to knead the dough. So,
right. So before you get to the tiltosh, the tafach is all built in that word is, let's say you are preparing the matzah. And by the way, this is going to be in the feminine third person singular, because the assumption is that who would be the one preparing the bread would be the woman. But it's interesting, who would be the one preparing the matzah to cook it right? The woman, right? That's not the way halachic matzah baking turned out in the frum 20th century. But the phrase assumes that this is being directed towards the female baker in the house, that if it tafach, if it began to swell, you added water to your flour, and you turned away a second, you got a phone call, and all of a sudden you saw it beginning to go like this, beginning to rise. Tiltosh bitsonen. She should lotesh. That's the tiltosh. She should lotesh bitsonen. What's sonen? I don't know what sonen, what that root means.
I don't know.
Sonen is
that says it's cold water.
Cold water. Sonen is mayim snunim is the opposite of mayim chamim, at least in this version of Hebrew. So you should like dab it. I'm going to show you Jastro on tiltosh.
Mayim snunin, is that modern Hebrew also, or is that? I heard that word.
Sonen, yeah.
Mayim sonanim.
Snunim is cold water.
Sonanim.
Mayim poshrim, mayim snunim, mayim chamim, v'mayim karim.
Mayim sonanim are usually from the refrigerator, I would say.
And isn't there a way of saying you have caught a cold in Hebrew that has that root?
Sonen, ani mitzunan is I have a cold.
Right. I have a cold. I cooled down. It's interesting because sometimes it means you have a fever, but it's the
cold.
How do you say this right? The colloquialism of I have a cold got translated into Hebrew using a rabbinic notion of the word cold, even though it really means that your body is heating up. So look at lotesh. So according to Jastro, lotesh means to polish. And look at this. You see where the pointer is? It's called a Jastro jackpot. That basically the phrase that Jastro is using to tell you what this verse means is basically our source. He's not quoting Rashi. He's quoting the source from which Rashi gets it in the Masechet Pesachim. Tafach tiltosh betzonen. If the dough shows evidence of rising, tafach tiltosh, let her polish it, betzonen, by means of cold water. Slap the dough with hands dipped in cold water, because the notion is that fermenting is a process that requires what? Time and heat, right? Right. If you're making bread, you put it in a warm oven to rise, right? So you interrupt that process by adding some cold water to it. Okay, so feed that into what Rashi's saying. Ushmartemet hamatzot means make this stuff carefully, watch it, shomer, protect it, guard it. If you see it beginning to turn into pri chametz, stop it. Like, get ahead of the problem. Okay, Barry, hold on one second. Let me just let Sue finish the Rashi. Rabbi Yoshia Omer.
Okay, Rabbi Yoshia Omer. Al ti kore et hamatzot ele et hamitzvot.
So first translate. So Rabbi Yoshia, Rashi is reading it midrashically.
Don't call this the matzahs. Call this the mitzvah, the mitzvah. He put it
right,
together.
And not even read, meaning like read this verse as if it doesn't say matzot. Put other vowels. Read it as if it says mitzvah, which is how you instinctually wanted to read it the first time. He says you were onto something, Suchetz Roni. Yeah.
Kederech she'en mechamitzin, so that you don't wait. That way, you don't.
I would translate kederach as just as. It'll be better. Just as
she'en mechamitzin, that you won't be leavening. That you don't leaven the unleavened matzah.
But that's half the idea. Just as you don't allow the matzah to sit long such that it can become sour, that's how he's reading it in Hebrew, French, English. Kach, similarly,
me?
Kach.
Oh, kach, that wasn't a period, I thought it was great. Kach, ein mechamitzin et hamitzvah.
Period.
No period.
I'm telling you, just put a period there.
Oh,
translate
okay.
that.
That way, kach.
Similarly,
you don't leaven. You don't cause. I think it's that you're not messing up the mitzvah. You're not contaminating the mitzvah.
So how do you contaminate a mitzvah that's parallel to contaminating what matzah is? The biggest fear in a matzah baking factory is what?
Water. Time
becomes leaven.
Time. Waiting too long, right? Shmura matzah is that the rabbis, were guarding it from the harvest until making it, and 18-minute matzah is they were even more certain that the baking, the bringing it to a certain heat, which kind of carries you over the fear of chimutz, happened before 18 minutes. So the fear of ruining matzah, of letting it sour, is by waiting too long. Metaphorically, just as you should not ruin matzah by waiting too long, don't ruin mitzvah by waiting too long, which is really a lovely idea. Ella,
im ba liadcha, aseh ota miyad. Does this bring in the run to do a mitzvah idea?
Yeah. So first translate that. Ella im ba liadcha.
Instead, if it comes near you, do it immediately.
Do it immediately, right?
Yeah.
It's really a lovely sermon, right? It's a sermon. It's Rashi saying, yeah, I know this. I know, even though Alter would disagree with him, I know this is about being careful about cooking matzahs. But I see matzot and I see mitzvot. It's the same letters, and I want you to be careful about cooking your mitzvah before it's too late, before something could happen. And what could happen? Several things could happen, right? A, the opportunity could be gone, right? This is, I don't know, you're on a trip, and you had an opportunity to daven mincha, and you said, I'll do it later. And then you got distracted. And next you realize the sun went down, you missed mincha, right? So you could literally miss that opportunity, right? Those of you who will be with us in Poland in a few weeks, we're going to make sure that we don't machmitz our mitzvot, that we're going to daven at the right time so that we don't realize that the day got away from us, right? What else could happen? What's the religious fear of what could happen? That's exactly right, Joel. Thank you for that. Lachmitz means to miss an opportunity. What could happen in the interim, not only that you missed the opportunity? What could sour? This is open to anyone. Vis-a-vis your relationship to the mitzvah.
You lost the opportunity.
Well, that's the first possibility, that literally the window closed because you didn't take advantage of it. What else might happen
You may
in
not
the
do it
interim?
at all.
Why?
Because you may not feel that it's important enough.
Oh, you might change, right?
Yeah.
So in the interim, two things could happen at least. One, the actual window of opportunity to perform the mitzvah could be gone, right? I mean, if you want to get stark, if anybody on this Zoom or listening to this has anybody that they feel that they should be going to pay a Bikor Cholim visit to, do it now. Do it now, because you don't know when you will have missed that opportunity because the person will no longer be alive, right? Or the opportunity might literally present itself, but you might have lost the inspiration. I remember when I was 16 years old, I was in Israel on a USY pilgrimage, and there was a group, like all the groups were coming together back when there were many USY pilgrimage groups, and we're having a davening, I think it was a Shabbat morning davening in a lobby of one of the hotels or one of the conference rooms. And I remember sitting, and Rabbi Nina Friedman, who was married to Rabbi Paul Friedman, who was the director of USY at the time, who went on to become exceedingly important mentors of mine at the time. But they didn't know who I was yet, and I didn't really know them. I just knew that the lore of them running USY. And Nina happened to be sitting next to me. That was my luck, that I happened to be sitting next to the wife of the director of USY. And I wasn't like in a davening mode, I guess. And I guess I was distracted or what, I don't know. And Nina would always tell you, she would always, reprimand you lovingly, but she would let you know if you weren't doing something the right way. And she basically said, why aren't you participating? Why aren't you following along? And I think I said something like, well, I'm not sure I'm in the mood for it right now. I don't know if it was verbatim. And she said something like, well, how do you know that when you're in the mood for it, God will be in the mood for it?
There you go.
Right? Like now, be'etzem hayom hazeh, to go back to what Tova was saying before, right? That don't let a mitzvah opportunity go by. This is one of the reasons why you put up the first plank of the sukkah right after you break the fast on the Elah. This is why you see some people when they get to the kotel, I think this is kind of misplaced urgency. They'll do Netilat Yadayim and then they'll rush to the kotel because they're supposed to run to do it. This is why if you have an opportunity to perform a sacred act, do it now. A less sacred and more prosaic version of this, one of my friends and teachers, Rabbi Barry Katz, we always talk about, like, if we get a great idea for a sermon, put it in a file. It's May and I got a great idea. I'm like, oh, this would be perfect for Vayechi in December. And Rabbi Katz said, don't put it in a file. Find a way to teach it now, right? Don't wait for the opportunity to teach good material. Teach the material now. It's the same idea, because it could become chametz. It could become chametz. It's really a lovely midrash on the not the ambivalence, the ambiguousness, the double entendre of mem tzadi vav taf, matzot mitzvot. Okay, Barry, you waited a long time. Go ahead.
Just a piece of personal folklore regarding cold water and matzah.
Yeah.
Uh, my mom did not like mushy matzah brei. And the way to make crispy matzah brei was to first very, 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 very briefly dump it into, break it up into ice water, ice water. And it just as quickly as you put it in, drain that water out, then put the egg in, and then cook it immediately, really fast, so that what you get in the result is a crispy matzah brei, not mushy.
Wow. I wonder if early on in that family minhag, Barry, is something not just about crispiness, but about cold water stopping the chametz process. You know, there's some people won't eat matzah brei because they consider it could be gebrachts, because the idea is that if you break up matzah, brach, and you add water to it, you could re-chametzify it.
If my mom were here right now, she'd be laughing away. This, wow.
It could be that a generation before, right? Like that she inherited that custom from a part of the family that wanted to make sure that if you're breaking up matzah and adding it to water, it's cold water, not warm water. It's a possibility. Okay. Tov, is your hand up? I see you're unmuted. No. Okay. All right. That's the first Rashi on that verse. And then Rashi, the second Rashi, Sue, you're still up. Remember we said that there are two ushmartems in the verse. There's the one where we're not sure, is it about matzah or mitzvot? And then there's the second one, which is ushmartem et hayom. And I think the reason why Rashi says something here that, spoiler alert, seems obvious, is because he read the first ushmartem differently. He read the first shmartem about a preparation, a cooking, not a shomer mitzvot. And so now he's going to reinforce that this shmartem, the second one, is more in that classical category. So I basically just told you what Rashi is going to say, but read it out, Sue. Ushmartem et hayom hazeh.
Ushmartem et hayom hazeh mimlacha. You shall observe this day from work, from working.
Right. Guard it from it being violated by your working on it. Right. So Rashi's saying, reader, unless you, reader, think that I, Rashi, think that this ushmartem also means something to do with preparation. No, this is the classic shomer, to protect something holy from it being violated, right? From prohibited labor. Joel.
I just want to know, I know it's getting late, so I want to deal with Stevie's comment before we end the session. I mean,
I may have missed it. What did he say?
This was all given before the 10th. And so he's saying, on this day, I brought you out. I know tenses in, biblical Hebrew are a little bit iffy, so it could be, I will have brought you out or whatever. But it's not on this day. It's like in a few days from now. So what is he saying? Is he saying that the die is cast? This is the point of no return. On this day already, the process is already in place?
Well, there's a lot going on there that I can't unpack in 30 seconds. Yes, early in the chapter, there is a sense that on this year and only this year, the preparation to get Korban Pesach ready starts on the 10th. But the Korban Pesach was always on the 14th. It's just that on that year, they had 4 days to get ready. Once you get to verse, where is it? Yeah, once you get to verse 8, V'yachlu et habasar b'layla hazeh, and they should eat the meat on that night. He's not talking about the 10th. He's talking about the 14th, when I'm going to do this thing, which is to smite the Egyptians. And when you get to verse 12, Avarti beretz Mitzrayim b'layla hazeh, and I'm going to pass through the land of Egypt on that night, God is saying, yes, earlier than the 14th, that on the 14th, I'm going to do it, right? And so at that point, the hazez are referring to the day that is coming up, that is going to be the day of Exodus. And so 14, V'haya hayom hazeh lachem lezikaron, that this day is going to be our day of remembrance, the day on which I'm going to do the thing I haven't yet done. Now, scholarship still hasn't resolved the question as to whether or not all of those are referring to the same original festival, and maybe there was an agricultural festival and an extra festival that's smushed into one. But the way chapter 12 is synthesized by traditional reading is that even though the instructions are being given in advance, and even though that year you start preparing Korban Pesach several days early, this night is the 14th. And in fact, if you look to the next verse, which we'll get to next week, so look at the first words of the next verse, verse 18. Barishon be'arba asar yom l'chodesh. On the first, that means the first month, be'arba asar yom l'chodesh, on the 14th day, be'erev at night. So we're about to get to a verse that's reinforcing that. Which night am I talking about? The night that hasn't happened yet, but it's going to be the 14th.
But even so, they didn't go out until the 15th.
Correct, because it's the 14th at night as it's darkening into the 15th. Okay. Thanks for doing this all on Zoom today, including those of you who normally come in person. Next week, in person as usual. Have a good day, and be well.
You've been listening to another in our series of podcasts from Temple Beth Am, a dynamic center for conservative Judaism in Los Angeles. If you enjoy these podcasts, we invite you to write a review on the Apple Podcast website or wherever you get your podcasts. For more information on Temple Beth Am, Los Angeles, please visit www.tbala.org.